Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest. And listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules Credit Union and Beehive Meals.
Question of the morning, part 2. Major League Baseball game, All-Star game last night. How cool will it be when the MLB plays the Baseball All-Star game in Salt Lake City?
It will be unprecedentedly cool.
Unprecedentedly?
Yeah. Is that a word?
Because as cool as the NBA All-Star game is, it happens in the winter. And we're all bundled up. And
that
there's
was cool,
fewer
and it's been
seats.
cool, yeah.
It's fewer seats. It's harder to get to. It's corporate. Now the Baseball All-Star game will also be corporate, but there'll be 2 to 3 times as many seats, so that helps. Increases your odds of getting in.
You want to talk about magnifying the beauty of this place? I just was looking at the internet here right now during the break, and they put out the fall schedule for the PGA. You know, they got like 4 events left. Then they do FedEx stuff. Then they take a week off. Then they do some fall stuff, and then in December they do all those silly golf things they call them. And so it's a headline: PGA Tour releases 2024 schedule, which has 8 events, including new one in Utah. Well, and this is the picture.
Photo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's ugly.
Yeah. So it's that black desert.
It's dramatic clouds, blue skies, super green grass against the dark mountains. It basically looks like an oil painting.
Yeah. And it's looking from the south, looking north to Snow Canyon. For many of you, and just probably about everybody, has been down there, right? And speaking to Patrick Manning, who's the big developer.
And so is this
It's in USA Today.
Okay.
This picture. I assume the picture is. It's just what's. I don't hold a newspaper anymore. Right. You just read his stuff online, and so you've got Patrick Manning's thinking this would be a game changer for that area. Once it's shown on television, it'll be on the Golf Channel. I think the dates are October 10th through the 13th, right? That whole week.
Correct.
And that's going to be a lot of fun, right? I'm going to be down there giving you complete coverage. I know the people down there and all that stuff. Played the course a couple weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. So you got that. And here in the West, the views that this will provide will be unlike anything ever in MLB. Ever, ever, ever. Because you look at Colorado, all ballparks have to face east. Professional ballparks.
It's a whole sun in the afternoon curveball coming at your head kind of thing.
Yeah, it's when they brought pro ball down to UVU, they turned it around, and so it faces east, right? Well, our stadiums facing east at that time of day.
Well, I assume most people listening to us at some point over the last 30 years have gone to a Buzz, Stingers, or Bees game. Of course. And seen the sunset on the mountains and thought, well, that's awesome.
The reflection? Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. And Colorado, you didn't have that. You look east and it's nothing but flat until you get to Michigan.
Yeah. It's a pretty stadium, and they've done some cool stuff with it.
It's great.
But
I've been there many times.
It's not pointed at mountains that are 2 miles, 3 miles away.
They can't.
They can't. You're right.
Right.
First off, the mountains are further away, and second off, the mountains are on the wrong side.
Yeah.
It's a little bit what they built stadiums on the water in San Diego and San Francisco, but for the reasons you talk about, the San Diego Stadium is pointed, Petco, is pointed away. You see downtown. It's pointed away from the water.
Right.
Whereas San Francisco is pointed at McCovey Cove, and you get the splashdown.
And that's fun. Right.
And that's what San Francisco has is better than what San Diego has. But because of geography, San Diego would have had to build it out in Coronado. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But that was the only way to do it.
Right. And the Dodgers have it somewhere. You can see the San Gabriels, but it's way out there. Here, it's going to be
right in your lap.
A Shohei home run away.
Yeah. That's going to be spectacular.
Yeah,
and I
really
assume, because we know the people and because we know what they think, I assume that they've already done the math on the camera positions, home plate, first, third. Okay, now, where are the openings in the outfield? What other real estate are you building? Don't block that view.
Right.
We need that camera, the third base camera, to get that shot of Mount Olympus.
Yeah. It's going to be incredible.
Right. And I think you can put a time on it, too, because baseball has shown that when new stadiums open, they usually give them a couple years
Right.
kind of as a shakedown kind of cruise, right?
Right.
To figure it out. And then they put a game in.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a number right now, I would probably pick 2034. The commissioner has said 2029 is when he wants to start the process. When you look, the expansion process, when you look at how long it's taken baseball before, like 2031, 32 is a good date. So go 2034, 2035. The hitch in this is that Kansas City, Tampa Bay, the Athletics, wherever they end up, Vegas, Sacramento, whatever they end up doing, there'll be several new stadiums that'll be getting this same treatment.
Yeah, but none like ours.
So what order they'll get the games, but those places all figure to get all-star games in the mid-2030s. So we're basically a decade away unless something happens with the expansion timeline.
You know what's going to happen? It's going to be so beautiful and so well run, and the players and everybody in MLB are going to love it so much. They're going to do the All-Star game like college baseball does with Omaha. It's going to be here every year.
They're not going to do that.
Mark my words.
They're not going to do that.
Mark my words.
I'm marking them. I'm marking them wrong.
No.
Red ink.
It's going to be incredible. This is going to happen.
You've had a series of good takes here in this segment, but I'm going to give you 99 out of 100 here because that one, not happening.
Well, if I would be perfect, I'd be like you-know-who and John Stockton. I mean, come on. You can't have that.
It's good that you throw out one bad take then.
Yeah.
But a bad take that made you popular, so good work.
This is going to be incredible. I'm so looking forward to it. And when that happens, then myself, like Kyle Whittingham, both of us at the same time in 2034, 2035, we will announce our retirement. Everything's going to be all right. Are people cynical? Because it's going to happen, people. And it's going to be a smash. And you're going to display this area in a manner that has never been displayed because we've had All-Star NBA, we've had NBA Finals, we've had Olympics, get Olympics again, but that's obviously in the winter.
Yeah.
And the winter has a form of beauty, but I think the summer has a different form of beauty that I appreciate a tad more. And you're going to see it on display.
Gorgeous.
It really is.
Yeah. And you really can spell it out here. The timeline, how everything's going to work.
And we've all enjoyed these views. And there's times, we probably take them sometimes for granted, but there's also times when it catches you and you look at it and you think, this is incredible. It just absolutely is incredible. The beauty, the natural beauty of this place. Yeah. And to have it be on display at that level, at that time of year, I look forward to it. And I know it's still a decade plus away. And hopefully I'll be alive. I've talked to Steve Starks.
I see what you did there.
I want to be the ball boy down third base.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to Steve Starks about being alive. Dr. Starks, what can you do for me?
He may have some power. I want to be the guy, the old guy with the helmet down the line. But
PK getting up. Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, you can't play third base for the Dodgers, but you could be the left field senior foul
that's what I'm
ball
talking about.
picker-upper.
Way down there, though.
I was going to say ball boy, but you know.
Ball person, ball man, whatever it might be. Yeah. I want to do it. Sit down that left field line with the helmet on and watch the game. It's just going to be awesome. And I really believe that the community, this community, I think Ryan Smith has nailed that when he says this community responds to events. I mean, I'm paraphrasing essentially what he said.
Right. But Utah shows up.
Yeah, shows up. Yeah, there you go. And I think he's right. Yeah, There's no question he's right. And they will on that, too.
I've often thought there's a lot of parallels between San Diego when I was a kid growing up and Salt Lake. And the population explosion comes 30 years later or whatever. So there's a little bit of a delay. But I was in high school or junior high. Maybe it was in junior high. But when the All-Star game came to San Diego for the first time, and everybody in town was talking
And
about
then you
it.
go?
It was such a big deal. And there was a lottery to get tickets. And against all odds, we won, and we got 4 tickets, and we went. And we sat. There were terrible
Are you living
seats.
here?
No,
Or you living there?
No, I was in junior high.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Dad said, "I'm entering the lottery for the tickets." Dad, huge baseball guy, huge, and so we got 4 tickets, and they were the right field foul pole in the old stadium. They were like a section and a half into foul territory. So it was right as the stadium bent around. You know, it was built for football. It was kind of odd. And we were looking into the sun. We were staring into the sun for 2 innings before that thing went down. We were trying to see. It was so hard. But it was awesome. It was fantastic. The place was just buzzing. It was electric. Everybody was amped up to be there. I remember that there was a fly ball to right center, and we were in foul territory down the right field line, and I screamed, "There it goes!" And Dad afterwards goes, "That wasn't going out." I go, "I know, but I wanted to yell at one time." that was, I think, 7-3 or something. Yeah, I don't remember much about it. That was a long time ago.
Who's the Padres representatives or representative?
In that era, it probably would have been
Mike
Winfield.
Ivy?
It would have been Winfield. No, not Mike Ivy. Why do you do that? Why do you do that? I'm having a nice moment here. Okay, for people who don't know, which would be 99.999% of you,
Enjoy
Mike
it.
Ivy.
I'm in that group. I don't know who this is.
Mike Ivy was the number 1 pick in the draft.
So it stands that he could have played in an All-Star game.
He was a catcher.
He had a little problem, but if
And
he can
in
hit,
Class
so what?
A baseball, he developed a phobia about throwing the ball back to the mound.
So did Dale
to the
Murphy.
pitcher. Eventually, they tried to move him to first base, and it never worked, and he washed out, and it was a wasted
washed
number 1
out?
pick. Yeah, it was a wasted number 1 pick. You can type in Mike Ivy, I-V-I-E, and his
He
career
didn't even
stats.
have like a Phil Nevin career?
No.
How do you make that noise?
No. You got to let a lot of air go out. No. He was no Jake Cronenworth.
No, I knew that. So it was just Winfield? Not Randy Jones, too?
Randy Jones had blown out his arm by then.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was a no-go. His big years were a couple years before that.
It wasn't the shortstop, number 11, Enzo Hernandez?
The 210 career hitter from Venezuela.
Yeah, but that was okay back then.
Actually, it kind of was because
Shortstops were just supposed to be glove guys.
Yeah, National League 173. I just looked it up. Yep, there it is.
And who was on the team? What year was this?
1978. Thurman Munson, the Yankee catcher,
Thurman Munson.
had to be replaced. He was hurt, and Darryl Porter came in. You probably remember Eddie Murray.
Murray?
Did not play. Jim Palmer was his starting pitcher.
Eddie Murray,
Yeah.
the Hall of Famer, who played at Lock High
Yes.
in L.A. City. And his teammate was Ozzie Smith, high school teammate.
Raleigh Fingers was in the bullpen for the Padres. I did not remember that. And Dave Winfield. They had 2. It was Fingers and Winfield.
So Fingers
Your
had
guy-
already had his Oakland run.
Yeah. He was still really good when he was in San Diego. He still had it.
For sure.
Tommy Lasorda was the Dodger manager, was the National League manager back then.
He was a character, I heard.
He was definitely a character. Johnny Bench, Steve Garvey, Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Larry Boa, George Foster, Greg Lazinski, and Rick Monday. There's your elected National League starters.
Oh, Maron.
Maron, those are the days, huh? Those are the days when ball players were ball players.
Raleigh Fingers, when I was a kid, we went to spring training once at Phoenix Municipal Stadium, which is still there. The Sun Devils now use it for their home stadium. And we were down, I was just with some high school buddies, and we were down the right field line, and the bullpen was just right there, and you could talk to the guys. And we were talking to Fingers, and he says, hey, I wasn't a big autograph guy. He says, you want to get an autograph? Yeah, who you got? He says, look over your left shoulder, about 5 rows up. You see that guy sitting there? Yeah. You know what that is? No. That's Vita Blue. And Vita Blue is just sitting there. And he can hear this. And then people start going over and bugging Vita Blue. And I think Vita Blue flipped off Raleigh Fingers.
Which is why Raleigh did it. They were both, those two guys were, they'd been teammates in Oakland. But by then, they've done the fire sale. So Fingers is in San Diego, Vita Blue's in San Francisco. They're both all-stars, and Vita Blue started that game against Jim Palmer.
Jim Palmer?
Yeah, the late Vita Blue.
Jim Palmer was a Phoenix guy. All the way. I think he went to Scottsdale Community. I believe Jim Palmer was adopted, too.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, and he's still broadcasting. He's got to be pushing 80. He did those underwear ads. That took some stones.
Yeah. You got to be fit.
Yeah, for sure. But all that is going to come here in time.
That game, I just looked, I got the notes here. The National League had 8 Hall of Famers. The American League had 9.
Whoa.
So you get whoever the legends of the game are in the mid-2030s. Because I think once they open the stadium, that really is give it a couple years, make sure you got everything worked out, and then give them the game. So if the commissioner's right about sticking to 2029 to start the process, 2031 is about the right time to have the first season with the stadium. So start looking at a 2034, 2035 timeline. A decade out, that event could be here.
And didn't I see something on our website, KSLSports.com? Dale Murphy was on with the Besties, and he was talking about that he's more confident than ever. What's that?
Everything you read now, national people who have no stake in it here, they're not homering, they're talking to Salt Lake's lead dog. Nashville had issues with the stadium side. They were the lead dog. And this is like the Big 12 title game. You don't have to finish first. There's going to be 2 teams. If you're the second team selected, you get the same thing as the first one.
Yeah, what's that website or that organization? What's it called?
Big League Utah.
Big League Utah. Yeah, there you go. That.
The only thing to worry about, really, I think, is like a Portland or a Vancouver suddenly getting their act together with something awesome. Because the commissioner has said multiple times on the record, we want one East and one West. They haven't said what it is, but behind the scenes, it's very clear they figured out realignment, which is important to start times, which is important to the visiting team getting TV ratings. It comes back to money.
Yeah.
And so, just as we follow this, if Vancouver, Portland suddenly has some awesome plan, then you can start worrying. But right now, I think you need to worry about something else. Right now, I think Salt Lake's in a really good place.
Right, and they may do a complete review of how they do things. Mm-hmm. Well, they need one in this time zone. And they got Pacific time zones.
They do.
For 95% of the season, the Diamondbacks are Pacific.
Mm-hmm. Got the 5 California teams.
Actually, for 100% of the season, they are Pacific time zone.
Mariners 6, Diamondbacks 7, and I assume this would be the 8th Western team, and that Colorado, they've got some plan where Colorado's partnered up with Central time zone teams.
Central?
That's what I would assume. They'd be the 9. I mean, count the markets in the West. Got 5 teams in California. Seattle and Arizona make 7. When he says he wants one East and one West, they must be figuring that Colorado's going to be partnered with some Central time zone teams.
Oh, how would they like that, though?
I don't know. But it must be the deal because the commissioner said this multiple times now. It's not. I don't even blink when I read a quote where he says it.
You're blinkless?
I am blinkless. Okay. I can stare. Want to have a staring contest? Staring contest would have been what I was
Blink
into.
Twice if you're in trouble.
Blink twice if... Commissioner, blink twice if there's still a team headed west.
Okay.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. When we come back, we are talking Open Championship with Brian Taylor. We'll see what he thinks of the picks, of the draft, and who he likes as the Open Championship gets underway tomorrow. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
It's what you want.
You know, I was babysat until 8th grade. Dolores Arnold used to babysit me every day after school. And
Dolores?
her husband, yeah.
Look how you got like 220-pound 8th grade hands.
Can we not focus on that?
You walk in like, hey, Dolores. Hi, Hans. I think it's funny the thought of a 8th grade Hans Olsen probably pushing 2 bills. He's sitting in and being babysat.
You guys let me know when you're done so I can finish my story.
Tell us more about Dolores.
Anyways, her husband, Don, liked MASH.
Sitting next to Don on the couch watching MASH.
Hey, Don, can I borrow your shaver?
Catch Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined by Brian Taylor, Real Golf Radio co-host. Brian, good morning.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good. You ready for the 3 a.m. wake-up call for the Open Championship?
I'm just getting ready to go to dinner. I mean, I've already been acclimating myself. So, yeah.
Nice.
I was driving in listening to Scheffler. They were on the Golf Channel talking about his press conference, and he was talking about being creative a little more so with this course and the British Open in general, but obviously specifically this course. Could you speak to that? What he was talking about? Maybe you have to have a little bit more creativity in your shot making.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a unique setup, right? You've got, like, on this golf course, when you make the turn, I mean, all links golf courses, you have gorse, you've got pot bunkers, and then you're factoring in wind. You know, you're in this completely defenseless area of land where, you know, the wind just, you know, that's what defines how you play shots. You know, sure, they put big pot bunkers, they have gorse bushes out there. Somewhere there's a green with a flag, but it's kind of how is the wind playing it, and that really is the big defense of these golf courses. So I think what he's talking about is, you know, with a lot of American golf, man, you just move it down there as far as you can, and then you hit it as close to the hole as you can, and that's still the goal, right, with links golf. But in this case, let's use when you make the turn 10 and 11, for instance. 10's a 450-yard par 4, and most of the time we would say, oh, that's a dogleg left. In this case, it's really more of a diagonal left, because there really isn't a dog leg. It's all gorse bushes. It's a bit of a blind tee shot, and now you're just kind of having to pick your line over that gorse, and now you're trying to factor the wind. So, you know, you've got this, you know, diagonal left, and the wind is off of the left, so it's holding that shot. And so you have to get a little bit creative. You know, are you going to hook it into the wind, or are you going to play it a little more out of the gorse and let it ride the wind? You know, those kind of things. You know, you turn around on number 11, it was the most difficult hole over the last several Open Championships at Troon, a 498-yard par 4. There's a railroad right down the right-hand side. And what good, you know, Open Championship venue wouldn't be complete without some train tracks going down the side of a hole? But, you know, it's that kind of diagonal right, and again, now you can play it up there with a left to right and ride that wind. So I think those are some of the things when they start talking about being creative. And then once you get around the greens, it's similar to Pinehurst, right? Which Scotty struggled at Pinehurst, but you can get real creative because you have lots of options. You could putt it with a fairway metal or a hybrid or a putter. You could chip it with a 6-iron or a 7-iron, or try to hit a conventional wedge shot because the firm surfaces. And so the other thing that's a little unique is oftentimes the fairways are faster than the greens. And that's different kind of golf than what you see here in the United States. So you don't have to play a ground game, but the ground game is there if the conditions, specifically the wind, gets too adverse. And so I think that's probably some of the things Scotty's referring to.
Now, you mentioned a 498-yard par 4 like it's an outlier, and you know, those holes still are. But isn't that where the PGA Tour needs to go now, with as far as guys hit the ball? Do you ever get tired week to week watching driver 9-iron, driver wedge, hole after hole after hole after hole, as these guys just crush it?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I think that's why the USGA has had this distance study they've been doing over the last several years, and looking at trying to, you know, put some parameters around golf balls and spin and that kind of thing. Now, back to that creative, these are really two good dovetail questions, because in the sense of getting creative, a lot of creativity was lost with the advancement in equipment. It's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, the best players have been able to take that equipment and they hit it just ridiculously far, and they just overpower. They basically, in the United States, it's an aerial game, and you just cover any sort of, you know, obstacle that might be in your way, and then you're just hitting wedges on. So then you look at a guy like Dustin Johnson, who could always hit it far. Then he focused on his wedge game, and then he won majors, right? I mean, that was sort of the recipe. They called it bomb and gouge back when Tiger and Phil were starting to do it, right? And so over in the UK, these golf courses, for the most part, you say 498 yards. That's not necessarily a long par 4 by American standards, but you get some cold weather over there. You get some whipping winds. You get some blind tee shots, the different angles, a couple of pop bunkers that can ruin your day, all those kind of things. And now you have to start thinking about it. It becomes more of that strategy or creativity, and it's not just here. It's not a par 3. Hand me the driver. And so, to your point, sometimes it does get a little bit boring. The day-to-day, week-to-week kind of golf course that they play in the U.S. is a pretty similar style. And so when you get some unique places like Pinehurst in the U.S. or certainly these links courses in the U.K., it does allow players to kind of showcase their ball striking skills and their creativity and does provide for some pretty fun, entertaining type golf. So, I don't know if I get totally bored with it. It's still fun to watch, but it is fun to watch this on an off week to be able to see what these guys can do with it.
This is going to be a weird comparison, but stay with me because I'm a weird guy, as you know, that for years when BYU and Utah and now Utah State, they would play Air Force. They'd say, oh, man, it's option week. It's the only time we see this offense, and so we've really got to hone in on it. And teams who play Air Force in a non-conference schedule is like, what are you doing? Why schedule them? Because you don't see that type of offense in any of your 11 games, and all of a sudden you're trying to cram for that. You see the parallel here in that when the Americans go over there, it's something that they don't see, and so they have to cram for it and make sure their games are ready.
It's a good comparison. I always sort of wondered if it was that hard to stop, why doesn't everybody do that wishbone, kind of thing. So that's an interesting comparison. Well, let's look at Troon, for instance, right? You've got, Henrik Stenson won in 2016. Bobby Locke won in 1950. Between those two wins, Arnold Palmer and the Americans were dominated. 1962 was Arnold Palmer. 1973, Tom Weiskopf. 1982, Tom Watson. Mark Calcavecchia in 89, Justin Leonard in 97, and the surprise winner, Todd Hamilton, in 2004. So all Americans, and Americans have won 6 straight majors. So, that's the interesting thing about it. And quite frankly, to your comparison, most of the time, the better, stronger teams would still find a way to defeat Air Force, even though it was challenging and tougher, and maybe they had to get a little creative, and it kind of caused some extra focus and that type of thing. They still ended up being on top, even though it was kind of wore them out by the end of the game, or in this case, the end of the week at a golf tournament. So there might be something to that. Look, at the end of the day, regardless of the test, I think the best ball strikers tend to be the ones that win. The difference here, and I've said this over and over the years, the Open Championship is the one where there is a bit of an element of luck. And what I mean is, because there's the way the Open is set up, they all go off the first tee, and tee times start very early in the morning and go late into the evening because there's all kinds of sunlight. And so you can very much have 3 or 4 different seasons in one day over in Scotland. So depending on what time you tee off or what time you finish, you could get the wrong side or the better side of the draw, and that's a thing, right? And so it's the golf course, it's the trickiness of it, but sometimes it's a little bit of element of luck on when you actually are out there playing.
Well, as long as we're going with Air Force football analogies and going down memory lane, let's hit another one here. There was a time where, you're right, Air Force had so much success, other teams that didn't have it. I know UTEP and Hawaii and someone else, it might have been New Mexico, but at one point, 4 of the 10 teams did run the option, and coaches did say it's getting easier to prepare because even though everybody has their own wrinkle, you're getting used to some of the basics. And some of the teams obviously didn't have success because of that and then went away from it, and Air Force just stuck with it. So to that point, I know some of the PGA Tour guys from the U.S. go over, and obviously they play the Scottish Open, they try to tune up. But are there guys who are on the European Tour who play a lot more links golf, who have an advantage this week and are an unusual name, and we should have been looking at them, and maybe we don't, but you are about to tell us about them now?
It's these analogies are cracking me up. I'm like back to my childhood of college football days listening to this conversation. But yeah, it is an interesting point. One of the points you made in there, maybe inadvertently, is the fact that a lot of the European players play primarily over here in the United States. So they see this links golf as often as the American players, even though they may have grown up playing it, so they got a little bit more of a history with it. But their games have been tuned into the PGA Tour and the tour courses because that's where the money is and that's where they're playing on a regular basis. That said, when you look at guys that are hot, I think you look at some of the players where people aren't talking about. Aaron Rise on a pretty good run right now. His last 3 starts, he's gone T2 at the Rocket Mortgage, T7 at John Deere, T4 at Scottish last week. So he's a guy that a lot of people are, in the golf world are kind of talking about that maybe some others aren't. Sanjay M has had a terrific year, but at the majors he's been absolutely awful, and he's missed the cut, I think, in all the majors. But other than that, he's just been a top 5 machine. So that he's an interesting one. Tony Finau is kind of an interesting one. I know he's not a European player that you asked about, but he's got some really good finishes. Hasn't had the best finishes in majors, but obviously coming off a really good one at the U.S. Open. Robert McIntyre, he's the darling this week, right? A Scot that won the Scottish Open. And, he's actually been playing pretty good. It's his second win on the year. So he's a little bit, he like he said in his social media post, though, he was practicing with a hangover, trying to get the hangover off from winning the Scottish Open. So he might not be a good one to bet on. Ludwig Åberg, everybody's talking about Åberg. Here's the strange thing is he has been dominating for 3 rounds in these tournaments, but isn't finishing it off, just like what we saw on Sunday at the Scottish. And so he's an interesting case to look at. But I don't know if that necessarily answers your question on what Europeans are flying under the radar. I always like guys like Tyrrell Hatton. We haven't seen a lot of him because he joined LIV. But Tyrrell Hatton is a guy that I love to watch. Tommy Fleetwood is a guy that I love to watch on these kind of golf courses where creativity is a factor and ball striking is a factor. I think Adam Scott is probably a little bit of probably going to slide under the radar. When you look at old guys competing and winning major championships, the Open Championship has provided plenty of them. Ernie Els won, later in his career. Darren Clark won later in his career. Tom Watson, for crying out loud, almost won in his 60s. So Adam Scott's had a lot of good finishes in the Open Championship. He's coming off a runner-up at the Scottish last week. So as far as players that maybe aren't the sexy names this week, those are some of the ones that stand out to me.
What do you attribute a little bit of a resurgence in DeChambeau's game? Because it seemed like he was hot and then fell off, was off the radar, and now it looks like he's back.
Are you talking about like over the last couple of years?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of reinvented himself. I mean, look at what he's done. I mean, to your point, he got all beefed up and he won at Winged Foot, and then he kind of started to slim down. And he was struggling with that challenge, right? His game was a little off. He completely fires all of his equipment company, starts building his own clubs. It disappears out on LIV for a while. So, again, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of him out on LIV. And then he shows up this year with this completely new attitude and also a completely new set of irons that he designed and that he, used a 3D printer to produce. So, again, classic mad scientist Bryson DeChambeau stuff. And yet the mad scientist sort of arrogance has been put aside. He's come out and become a man of the people. It's almost as if he looked around and he said, you know what, Arnold Palmer, Phil Mickelson, those guys did pretty well for themselves. There's nobody really out there doing it right now. Scotty Scheffler is capturing the world by storm with his golf clubs, much like Jack and Tiger, but not necessarily, he doesn't have the same affinity for showmanship and interaction with the crowds and that kind of thing. So it's almost as if Bryson said, look, there's an open stage here. I'm going to take it. And so he starts being, the friendly Bryson, the fun Bryson, the entertaining Bryson, the exciting Bryson. And his game seems to have risen with it. So I don't know specifically like breaking down his, if he's changed, his, swing per se, but he's changed a lot of things about him. And I think most notably is his attitude, and it's paid off. I mean, he's got a second and a first and a sixth, I think, in the majors this year. So pretty impressive what Bryson's done. I have not always been a big fan of Bryson DeChambeau. I thought his act was a little bit I don't know, annoying at times, I guess. But he's also, I take my hat off to what he's done this year and the way, and I'll allow people to change. And right now, I can certainly appreciate what Bryson's doing, and it's fun to watch.
I tend to gravitate towards the people who are fun because I come to sports for fun. So I think if I were that good, and I'm nowhere near that good, I'd be having a great time if I were out there. It'd be awesome. So I appreciate that. But I think more importantly, as I try to get better at golf, there's two people who are giving me tips. And PK's given me some gems that have really made a difference. And there's another guy I golf with who's given me some tips. And one thing Ron is actually his name. and Ron says, one thing he said earlier, he says, stress is the enemy of a golf swing. You got to relax. You got to relax. I know you want it bad, but you got to relax. And as you were talking about Bryson, I wondered if he eliminated a bunch of stress. Is just out there. Do you buy that stress is the enemy in golf? Because there are times like in football you can get stressed because I'm gonna run, I'm gonna blow this guy up, or I'm the running back, I'm gonna run through this linebacker and get to the goal line. But it's golf. Stress is the enemy.
Oh, I like how you brought it down.
And you can't outwork it. Yeah, you can't be like, okay, I'm going to try harder this time, or I'm going to run faster this time, or I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like you almost have to completely turn that off. And I think a lot of players get a bad rap for that. It is a hard game. And when you go out there, and some people, in order to be able to do that, they just have to sort of get in their own little world, in their own bubble. And so you go to a golf tournament, and there's your favorite player, and he's walking down the fairway, and you're like 10 feet from him, and you're screaming at him, and you're throwing something familiar to him and letting him know how much you love him, and he doesn't even acknowledge you, and now you're shattered. And you think that guy's really not the guy that you hoped he would be, and what a jerk, you know. When he might actually just be trying to do what you did and try to calm himself down. He might be in the middle of some self-talk being like, hey, you're a PGA Tour player. You don't suck. It's just like the rest of us, right? We hit a bad shot. You suck. You know, the negative self-talk in golf is unreal. I mean, the name calling, it's something that I tried to work on years ago. Say, look, this doesn't change my identity. And so many of us, right, we identify with how our golf game is going that particular day, and we call ourselves names, and we get all worked up and stressed. Now, what causes stress? Typically, stress is caused because it means something. Something, you know, it has some value to you, whether you're trying to shoot your best score ever, or your best round on that course, or you're trying to win your club championship, or a golf tournament on the PGA Tour, or your first major like Rory in 10 years. When it means something to you, that adds a measure of stress, and then suddenly it inhibits your ability to play how you are capable of playing, and you miss some short putts down the stretch. Pinehurst was brilliant to watch because Bryson missed them, Rory missed them. Why? Those guys don't miss those putts. I think Rory had made like 50-something in a row from that distance, and he misses 2 down the stretch because it mattered. It means something, and that's pressure, and it's the way guys handle pressure that, for me, appeals to watching golf and other sports. And so, yeah, trying to eliminate that stress is paramount, and it is an enemy to the game, and it's just difficult. People have different ways of coping with it, and maybe Bryson's was just getting out of his own way.
Brian, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for the time. Enjoy that 3 a.m. wake-up call, and congrats on having a nice dinner this early in the morning.
You know what? Here's the thing. I've only gone to Scotland twice, and you definitely don't go for the food, at least in my mind. It was like the chippies are good, fish and chips, right? But you can only eat so much fried fish in one particular week. The rest of it, yeah, I'll stay here for the food.
There you go. Thanks, Brian.
See you, boys.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. What is Florida State doing? And is it going to end up with them in the Big 12 playing BYU and Utah? We'll talk with Matt Michelle, college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel, coming up at the top of the hour right here on The Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Could you imagine the conference having Clemson and Florida State? I'm telling you, that's an awesome ad if they were able to get those teams. And talk about trying to be some of the best conferences in the country. It's really, really wild stuff.
It's not a secret at all that Florida State and Clemson are very disgruntled, very unhappy in the ACC. I mean, they basically filed a lawsuit, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to get out of the grant of rights deal so that they can move on. The Big 12 makes perfect sense for them. The Big Ten's already loaded with 18. The SEC, they're quiet on this. I don't know that I think the Florida State and Clemson would already be in the SEC if they were wanted there. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But what conference is being proactive right now? What conference has been aggressive? What conference is talking big? Brett Yormark in the Big 12.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. It is a Wednesday, which means it's a Win Tickets Wednesday. And we've got tickets right now to give away to see A Day to Remember at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater, July 21st. Caller 12-801-575-ZONE wins a pair of tickets to see A Day to Remember at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater, July 21st. 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE. DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Got a lot coming up today. Jazz are playing a Summer League game against Toronto, the Raptors, 3 o'clock, ESPN2. You can check that out. NFL camps are opening. Patrick Mahomes says there's a weird feeling because they didn't play their best football on offense. And yet they won the Super Bowl anyway.
What is their best football? Has that ever been achieved?
Well, you can't play perfect football, so I guess you can always say that they could always do better. But I thought they really did struggle on offense last year, but they were good enough when they needed to be good enough, so they got the trophy.
Compared to what, though?
Compared to them in previous years.
Right, but every
lost.
year is different.
Yep. They lost 5 or 6, 6 games, I think, last year, which is unusual for them. And they lost them in games where they didn't score enough points.
Yeah, but
in January and February, they're fine.
And that's what they know. They've been to the mountaintop. They know that you need to just get in, and we've seen that in the NBA. That's what load management is all about. That's the essence of it. And it's the curse of the NBA because the postseason is so good, and to win it all, the drive is so strong that it doesn't matter in January.
Baseball and football protected the regular season with the smaller playoffs for a long time, but it's like they've given in. I mean, there's so many 500 teams now in baseball that they're in the mix. They have it. You were talking buyers and sellers earlier this week. Are you a buyer or you're a seller? And they're 500, and they're within 3.5 games, and they got a chance.
You know what it comes down to?
Pitching.
Getting in. But I mean the essence of it, why they implemented it. One word.
Money.
Well, everything is money.
Oh, okay. What's the other word?
What leads to the money?
Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dreaded word.
Mm-hmm. Hope. Hey, you're saying there's a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there literally is. You want to dismiss it. The Padres, like the Diamondbacks, are 1 game over. And what are we doing? Why are we talking about this? They're not the best team in baseball. And yet,
they don't have to be.
The Diamondbacks,
especially in this sport.
Right, did just enough to get in, and then they were really good in the fall, and they ended up in the World Series.
Yeah, I think they were 6 over last year in the final analysis. Yeah. I believe they lost their last 4.
Because they'd been 10 over, and they backed in.
Yeah.
And did it matter? They got to the World Series, and everybody in Phoenix is on fire.
And I think that's the frustration with the Jazz fans right now. When can I have hope?
Not yet.
Right. What hope do I have? If they knew that this plan
was going to yield a title.
26, 27. Well, not even a title.
Okay, it was going to yield.
Certainly if they knew it was a title. But you would be in thick contention, not peripheral contention, real contention.
If you were going to win 55 regular season games and be guaranteed a spot in a Western Conference final, and then whatever happens, happens. Yeah. Maybe you get beat, maybe you go on. But if you knew you got that much in 2029, there'd be a lot less complaining right now.
Yeah. Right.
And they just don't see any progress.
They don't yet.
Although maybe it's happening with these 6 young guys, and you just can't know.
But that's the thing about it is you don't know if it is. Yes, maybe it is happening.
I agree.
But we don't know if it is. If it was happening, we can see it, and I think that the fan base would be, all right. But the frustration is that we don't know. Now, it's not really showing up at the box office because it's still fun to go and watch, and it's an entertainment, and we're looking for entertaining things to do. And so I think they're okay there.
Yes, and I think I think those two things can happen at the same time.
I
because
agree.
Businesses are buying those tickets, and people who control budgets, either as owners or managers,
agreed,
get access. And if you're cutting some business deal that's worth $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, if you spend $1,000 on tickets to go to a game with somebody you're going to do business with, that's a good investment.
Yeah, I got you.
So I think they're going to keep selling. And I think hockey's going to sell for the same reason.
Agreed.
Now, are there enough businesses when baseball is here? Not if, when. We're past hope. When? Is there enough for all three of those? That's a question to be determined.
Hopefully.
Right. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up next, Matt Michelle, college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel. Florida State, what are they doing? And is it going to end up with them in the Big 12 playing the Utes and Cougars? That's next.